A genetically enhanced super-soldier dog smashed through 3 feet of steel-reinforced concrete and vanished into the night, leaving a trail of blood and bodies as alarms blared throughout the secret military lab. Dr. Thomas Phillips stared at the blinking red dot, rapidly moving away from the facility on the GPS tracker, his hands shaking. K9X-47 was the pinnacle of the military's attempt to create the ultimate battlefield weapon. A dog with the strength of a bear, the speed of a cheetah, and the intelligence of a human. And now this unstoppable killing machine was loose. It had started out as a routine genetics experiment, splicing together DNA to craft the perfect guard dog and frontline companion for soldiers. But in a late-night eureka moment, Dr. Phillips and his team discovered a strand of genes from an extinct apex predator species that, when introduced into a German Shepherd embryo, unlocked unprecedented levels of physical and mental prowess. They called it the Praetorian Project. K9X-47 grew rapidly, reaching the size of a small pony by 6 months old. He could run at 45 mph for hours, leap 10-foot barriers, and literally tear a man limb from limb. His intelligence was off the charts. He could understand complex commands, solve advanced puzzles, even communicate with specialized equipment. Dr. Phillips thought he had created the ultimate loyal soldier. But as K9X-47's abilities grew, so did his ferocity and primal instincts. He became uncontrollable, lashing out at the scientists, ignoring commands, growing more vicious by the day. Dr. Phillips realized they hadn't just enhanced a dog, they had resurrected a monster driven by bloodlust and prehistoric predatory urges. Now that monster had broken containment and was roaming free. Every hour increased the chances of civilian casualties and potential public exposure of the project. If word got out, the outcry would be catastrophic. Congress would shut them down. The media would crucify them. The project would be stamped a failure. Dr. Phillips gripped the edge of the control panel, his knuckles white as he watched that blinking red dot zoom further away. No, failure wasn't an option. Too much was at stake. Decades of research, billions in funding, his entire legacy, and life's work. That dog had to be stopped, no matter the cost. But a grim thought crept into Dr. Phillips' mind. What if this wasn't a disaster, but an opportunity? A chance to see the project's full potential unleashed, unfettered by cages or restraints, or pesky ethical boundaries. After all, you can't spell progress without a little transgress. Dr. Phillips reached for the phone with a trembling hand. It was time to activate Contingency Plan Delta. They were going to catch that dog, and then the real experiment would begin. Word of K9X-47's escape spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves of fear rippling across the nation. Blurry videos of a massive creature rampaging through forests and fields flooded social media. Panicked 911 calls reported livestock mauled in their pens overnight. Hysterical campers swore a demon dog the size of a bear chased them from the woods. The military scrambled to contain the situation, but couldn't openly mobilize forces without revealing the existence of the top-secret super-soldier program. Behind closed doors, a hastily assembled panel of top brass and government officials demanded answers from a haggard Dr. Phillips. "You said it was loyal. You said it was controlled," General Briggs growled, slamming his fist on the table. "Does this look controlled to you?" He jabbed a finger at grainy security cam footage of K9X-47 tearing through the concrete wall of his pen. Dr. Phillips swallowed hard. His creation, his monster, was out there somewhere, and it was his fault. Under the withering glares of the assembled brass, Dr. Phillips did the only thing he could. He volunteered to clean up his own mess. "I'll bring it in. Give me a team, off the books. I know my dog. I can find him." "Your dog?" Senator Kinsey scoffed. "That thing is an abomination. It needs to be put down, not brought back." "No," Dr. Phillips blurted out. "I can fix this, I swear it. Just give me a chance." The officials glanced at each other, then back at the doctor. "You have 72 hours, Phillips. We're giving you a Black Ops team, Alpha Wolf. Get that damn dog back, or we'll bomb it to hell and bury you in so much paperwork you'll never see daylight again." Dr. Phillips nodded grimly, his face pale. "I won't let you down, sirs." Alpha Wolf assembled within the hour. 6 battle-hardened soldiers, the best of the best, each handpicked for their unique skills. Their mission: track down K9X-47 and bring it in, dead or alive. Failure was not an option. As the team pored over the map, plotting K9X-47's last known locations, a pattern began to emerge. The dog was moving with purpose, leaving a trail of mangled cattle and shattered trees in his wake. He was headed north, into the vast wilderness of the Rockies. Alpha Wolf pursued, following the carnage like breadcrumbs. They were always one step behind their prey, arriving at ravaged campsites and blood-soaked meadows just hours too late. The few eyewitnesses they found were almost incoherent with terror, babbling about a demon wolf that walked on 2 legs. Meanwhile, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. With each new sighting, the theories grew wilder. Some claimed it was a mutant, an escaped lab experiment. Others swore it was an alien, heralding an invasion. The most outlandish even whispered that it was a werewolf, a living legend made real. Dr. Phillips and Alpha Wolf raced against the clock, desperate to find K9X-47 before the truth could be exposed. But the deeper they dug, the more secrets they uncovered about the Praetorian Project, secrets that shook Dr. Phillips to his core. K9X-47 was not the only embryo to receive the experimental gene therapy. There were others, dozens of trials, each more unethical than the last. And some of the test subjects, some of them were human. Dr. Phillips gripped the armrests of his seat as the chopper roared over the city skyline, his heart pounding in his chest. Alpha Wolf had been hot on K9X-47's trail for days, following a path of destruction that cut a swath across the countryside. But nothing could have prepared them for the scene that awaited them in the heart of downtown. The mall was in chaos. Screams echoed through the cavernous atrium as panicked shoppers fled in all directions, trampling each other in their haste to escape. In the center of it all stood K9X-47, a massive, snarling beast that seemed to have stepped straight out of a nightmare. He had a young woman in his jaws, her body limp and bleeding as he shook her like a rag doll. All around him, the bodies of his victims lay strewn across the polished marble floor, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Alpha Wolf hit the ground running, their weapons drawn as they fanned out across the mall. But before they could even get close, a new sound echoed through the chaos, the thrum of helicopter blades. Dr. Phillips watched in disbelief as a sleek black chopper descended from the sky, hovering just above the mall's glass ceiling. Ropes dropped from its belly, and a team of heavily armed soldiers rappelled down, their faces obscured by dark visors. At their head was a man Dr. Phillips had never seen before, tall and lean, with a shock of silver hair and a face that seemed carved from granite. He strode towards Dr. Phillips with the confident air of someone who was used to being in charge. "Dr. Phillips, I presume," he said, his voice cold and clipped. "I'm Agent Knox. I believe we have a situation on our hands." Dr. Phillips bristled at the man's tone, but he knew he couldn't afford to let his ego get in the way. Not with so many lives at stake. "What do you know about K9X-47? He demanded, his eyes never leaving the snarling beast in the center of the mall. Knox's lips twisted in a humorless smile. "More than you, I'm afraid. Your dog is not just a scientific experiment gone wrong. He's a key component in a far-reaching conspiracy that threatens the very fabric of society." Dr. Phillips felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" K9X-47 was created as part of a secret initiative to develop a new breed of super soldiers, Knox explained, his voice low and urgent. Soldiers who could operate without the constraints of human morality or emotion. The perfect killing machines, unleashed upon our enemies without hesitation or remorse. Dr. Phillips shook his head in disbelief. "That's impossible. I created K9X-47. I would have known if—" "You were just a pawn in a much larger game, Doctor," Knox interrupted, his eyes hard and unyielding. The project's backers realized too late that they had created something far more dangerous than they ever intended. K9X-47 is not just a weapon. He's a sentient being with his own desires and agendas, and now he's loose in the world with the power to bring civilization to its knees. Dr. Phillips felt a wave of nausea wash over him as the full weight of Knox's words sank in. He had created a monster, a being of unimaginable power and intelligence, and set it loose upon the world. And now, innocent people were paying the price for his hubris. Together, Dr. Phillips and Alpha Wolf raced into the mall, dodging terrified civilians as they closed in on their target. But even as they drew nearer, Dr. Phillips couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that someone, or something, was pulling the strings behind the scenes. He shook off the thought as he leveled his tranquilizer gun at K9X-47's snarling face. They had to contain this threat, no matter the cost. But even as his finger tightened on the trigger, Dr. Phillips couldn't help but wonder, was K9X-47 really the true mastermind behind the chaos? Or was there an even greater threat, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike when the time was right? Dr. Phillips's phone buzzed with an incoming message. The number was blocked. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing as he read the cryptic text. K9X-47 origins. Abandoned warehouse, city outskirts, come alone for answers. He showed the message to the Alpha Wolf commander, who shook his head. It's a trap. We can't risk it, not with that thing still on the loose. But Dr. Phillips couldn't ignore it. This could be the key to understanding K9X-47, to stopping this nightmare. He had to know. Knox's team can handle them all. We have to follow this lead, trap or not. I'm going, with or without you. The commander gritted his teeth but nodded. They slipped away, leaving Knox barking orders as they sped towards the outskirts. The warehouse loomed before them, rust-eaten and derelict. Dr. Phillips and the commander entered cautiously, weapons drawn, scanning the shadows. A voice echoed from the darkness. "Dr. Phillips, I've been expecting you." A figure emerged, an older man, his face weathered and scarred. "I'm the handler. I was on the inside of the Praetorian project, and you've only scratched the surface of what it really was." Dr. Phillips trained his gun on the man. "Talk now." The handler smiled grimly. K9X-47 was just one success in a sea of experiments. Dozens of subjects, human and animal, each more lethal than the last. Living weapons. He began to pace. But this was bigger than just a military project. This was the work of a global cabal. Corporations, governments, even beings from beyond the stars. They wanted to remake the human race itself into something better. Soldiers immune to fear, to mercy, to morality itself. Dr. Phillips felt his world tilting on its axis. "My God, what have we done?" The handler continued, but some subjects began to rebel, to think for themselves. K9X-47 was one of them. And I couldn't stomach it anymore. The things they did to those poor souls, I had to resist from inside. Just then, Dr. Phillips' radio crackled to life. It was Knox, his voice strained. "Phillips, the dog broke containment. It's tearing up downtown. We need backup now." Dr. Phillips looked at the handler, then at the commander, torn. The handler grabbed his arm. "You know the truth now. You have a choice. Be their pawn or help me dismantle this thing before it's too late." Dr. Phillips yanked his arm away. I have to go. I have to fix this." He turned to leave. The commander hesitated, then followed. "I'm with you, Doc. Let's end this." As they raced back towards the city, sirens wailing in the distance, Dr. Phillips felt a chill certainty in his bones. The handler was right. This was only the beginning. And whoever was really behind this madness, they had to be stopped, no matter the cost. Downtown was a war zone. Cars overturned, storefronts smashed, blood on the streets. K9X-47 bounded through the chaos, a dark blur of fur and fury, unstoppable. Knox's men fired from behind cars, trying to corral the beast, but it shrugged off bullets like raindrops. Dr. Phillips and the commander skidded onto the scene. Knox ran to them, his face grim. "Damn it, Phillips, where were you? We're losing control here." K9X-47 whirled at the sound of Dr. Phillips' voice. Its eyes locked onto him, burning with a near-human hate. It tensed to charge. "We found answers," Dr. Phillips said, not taking his eyes off the dog. "This is bigger than we ever imagined. But now—" He raised his tranq gun, aiming down the sights at the snarling face of his creation. "Now we finish this, one way or another." K-9647 roared and leapt. Dr. Phillips fired. The dart struck home in the beast's neck, but it kept coming, claws extended, fangs bared. It slammed into him, knocking him to the ground as its jaws closed around his arm. He screamed. Knox's men opened fire, bullets peppering the dog's hide. It jerked and convulsed, Dr. Phillips pinned beneath its bulk. The tranquilizer was kicking in, but not fast enough, not before those teeth could tear out his throat. This was his fault, his arrogance, his playing God. And now, as the world went black around him, as K9X47's jaws tightened on his flesh, this was his fault, his arrogance, his playing God. And now, as the world went black around him, as K9X47's jaws tightened on his flesh, Dr. Phillips knew he was about to pay the ultimate price. But suddenly the dog went limp. The tranquilizer had finally taken effect. Dr. Phillips shoved the massive body off him with a groan, his arm a mangled mess. Knox rushed over, barking orders into his radio. "We need containment now, and a medical team for Dr. Phillips." As a swarm of agents secured the scene, the commander helped Dr. Phillips to his feet. "You crazy bastard," he muttered, shaking his head. "You could have been killed." Dr. Phillips managed a pained smile. "Wouldn't be the first time my work nearly did me in." Just then his phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He put it on speaker. "You were warned, Doctor," came the handler's gravelly voice. "You should have let it go." Dr. Phillips' face hardened. "This isn't over. I'm going to find you and I'm going to stop you, whatever it takes." The handler just laughed. "You have no idea what you're up against. This is so much bigger than you can imagine, but by all means, keep digging. I'll enjoy watching you destroy yourself." The line went dead. Dr. Phillips looked at Knox and the commander, his eyes blazing with determination through the pain. "Get this thing locked down. We end this now." As a containment team loaded K9X47's unconscious body into a secure transport, Dr. Phillips allowed himself to be led to a waiting ambulance. His mind raced as a paramedic tended to his ravaged arm. K9X47 was neutralized, but at what cost? The conspiracy ran deeper than he ever imagined, and now he had a target on his back. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when he was so close to the truth. No matter where the path led, no matter the danger, he had to see this through. For K9X47, for every innocent life torn apart by the Praetorian Project's unholy ambitions. As the ambulance tore through the streets, sirens blaring, Dr. Phillips closed his eyes and made a silent promise. To the victims, to the world, and to himself. This ends now, no matter the cost. The city blurred past the windows as Dr. Phillips gripped his bandaged arm, his mind whirling with dark thoughts. But one thing was crystal clear. This was only the beginning. Back at headquarters, Alpha Wolf pored over every scrap of evidence they had gathered. The handler's words echoed in Dr. Phillips's mind as he paced the room, his arm in a sling. What did he mean? We have no idea what we're up against. What could be bigger than a goddamn super-soldier conspiracy? Knox shook his head. "I don't know, but I've been digging into the Praetorian Project's backers and I'm hitting a lot of dead ends. Shell companies, offshore accounts, redacted files. Someone's gone to a lot of trouble to cover their tracks." Dr. Phillips slammed his good hand on the table. "Then we keep digging. We follow the money, the paper trail. There has to be a weak link somewhere." The commander nodded. "I'll reach out to my contacts in intelligence, see if they've heard any chatter about this." Just then an alert pinged on Knox's tablet. His face went pale. "Oh, God." Dr. Phillips grabbed the tablet, his eyes widening as he read the message. "Containment breach. K9X47 is loose." The room erupted into chaos. Alarms blared as agents scrambled to their stations. Dr. Phillips grabbed Knox by the collar. "How the hell did this happen? That transport was supposed to be secure. Knox shoved him off. I don't know. But we have to act fast if that thing gets into a populated area. Dr. Phillips was already moving, barking orders. I want eyes on every street, every camera in the city. We find that dog now. But deep down, a cold dread settled in his gut. He had a terrible feeling that this was no accident, that somehow the conspiracy had outsmarted them once again. As he raced to the command center, he could only pray they weren't too late. The streets were in chaos. Screams rang out as panicked civilians fled in terror. Reports flooded in of a monster dog rampaging through the city, unstoppable, uncontrollable. Dr. Phillips and Alpha Wolf tracked K9X-47's path of destruction, always one step behind. The containment teams were useless. The dog shrugged off tranquilizers, tore through nets, evaded traps. It was like he knew their every move. Knox pulled Dr. Phillips aside, his face grim. We can't keep this up. At this rate, half the city will be destroyed before we even get close. Dr. Phillips ran a hand over his haggard face. What choice do we have? We can't just let that thing run wild. Knox hesitated. The military is mobilizing. They're talking about a tactical strike. Missiles, heavy ordnance, scorched earth. Dr. Phillips blanched. They can't. The collateral damage, the lives lost. They don't care, Knox said flatly. To them it's acceptable losses as long as the threat is neutralized. Dr. Phillips shook his head vehemently. No, there has to be another way. I won't let them destroy half the city to clean up my mess. He turned to the commander. Evacuate the area. Get as many civilians clear as you can. The commander frowned. What are you going to do? Dr. Phillips checked his tranquilizer gun, his jaw set. I'm going to end this once and for all. He strode out into the street, ignoring the shouts of protest behind him. In the distance he could hear the roar of helicopter blades, the ominous thump of tanks rolling in. The military was closing in. He had to reach K9X-47 first, had to try to reason with him one last time, before the bombs fell and erased all trace of Philip's terrible mistake. He tracked the dog to a construction site on the city's edge. Girders and scaffolding rose like a skeletal maze into the sky. Overturned vehicles and broken concrete littered the ground. And there, in the center of the chaos, stood K9X-47, panting, bloody, his eyes wild with rage and confusion. Dr. Phillips approached slowly, his gun lowered. Easy, he called out. It's me, it's Phillips. I'm here to help you. K9X-47 snarled, his hackles rising. But he didn't attack, not yet. Dr. Phillips kept his voice steady, soothing. I know you're scared, I know you're angry, but this isn't you, this isn't what you were meant for. He took another step forward. You're not a weapon, you're not a monster. You're a marvel of science, of nature, a testament to the bond between man and beast. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of recognition in those fierce eyes, a glimmer of the loyal, trusting creature he had raised from a pup. Come back with me, Dr. Phillips pleaded. We can fix this, we can make it right, no more cages, no more experiments. A life of freedom, of purpose, like you deserve. K9X-47's snarl faded. His stance relaxed. Slowly, tentatively, he took a step towards Dr. Phillips. And then a shot rang out. The dog stumbled, yelping in pain and shock. Blood bloomed across his chest. His eyes met Dr. Phillips, wide and betrayed. Dr. Phillips whirled, spotting the glint of a sniper scope on a nearby rooftop. One of the handler's men, it had to be, sent to clean up loose ends. No, he screamed, but it was too late. K9X-47 collapsed, his body shuddering as the life bled out of him. Dr. Phillips ran to him, skidding to his knees beside the fallen creature. I'm sorry, he choked out, gathering the dog's massive head in his arms. I'm so sorry. K9X-47 whined softly, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His eyes locked onto Dr. Phillips, and in that moment, a profound understanding passed between them. Forgiveness, acceptance, a bond deeper than the evils that had torn them apart. With a final shuddering sigh, K9X-47 went still. Dr. Phillips bowed his head, hot tears splashing onto blood-matted fur. He knelt there for what felt like an eternity, cradling his fallen creation, his friend. Overhead the helicopters circled, the tanks rumbled closer. But Dr. Phillips barely noticed. All he could feel was the weight of his failure, the depths of his loss. Finally, Knox's hand fell on his shoulder. "Phillips, we have to go, it's over." Dr. Phillips looked up, his eyes hard as flint. "No," he said quietly, "it's not over, it's just beginning." He laid K9X-47's body down gently, his hand lingering on the still warm fur. Then he stood, turning to face the gathering crowd of agents and soldiers. "The Praetorian Project ends here," he declared, his voice ringing out across the ruins. "But the fight against those who created it, those who perverted science into a weapon against all life, that fight goes on." He met Knox's gaze, then the commander's. "I'm going to find them, I'm going to stop them, whatever it takes, for him," he nodded to K9X-47's body. "For all of them, until every cage is opened, until every twisted experiment is ash. And I won't do it alone." His eyes challenged the assembled men and women. "Who's with me?" For a long moment no one moved. Dr. Phillips stood tall, unflinching, the weight of his conviction like a physical force. Then slowly Knox stepped forward. Then the commander. One by one the others fell in, standing shoulder to shoulder in silent unity. Dr. Phillips nodded grimly. "Let's get to work. We have a world to save." As the makeshift army marched from the construction site, K9X-47's body was reverently carried out with them. Not as a trophy or an experiment, but as a fallen soldier, a symbol of all they had lost and all they yet struggled to protect. Dr. Phillips took one last look at his lifeless friend, at the destruction and chaos that had been wrought in the name of power and progress. Then he turned his face to the future, to the battles to come. The Praetorian Project had birthed a monster, but perhaps, from its ashes, a new hope could rise. A hope named K9X-47. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.